Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all chess enthusiasts in the world, wherever you are right now. We are back. The Kenley Chess is back in this 15th episode of the series Clash of the Titans. In case if you haven't seen the our videos. We are now on the 15th. And to those who haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and help me grow my channel. I would appreciate it very much if you can click subscribe. And to those who have subscribed already, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate your support. And hopefully, in the near future, we will be streaming live on YouTube. We have done that already. In other platforms. And I thought at first that I have connected like multi stream on different platforms. Unfortunately, it did not connect to YouTube, or it was not properly set up so that we are also live in YouTube. But yes, don't worry about it. I mean, hopefully in the near future, we will be able to, what you call this, set up the hardware, softwares, and all that nonsense properly. So yes, and let's go back to the game. In this game, Leela Chess Zero is playing the black pieces, and Stockfish is playing with the white pieces. Let's not wait any longer, and let's watch the game. And Stockfish opens up with 1 e4. Leela respond e5, knight f3, knight c6. Very common, very usual. Bishop c4, bishop c5, and we have arrived in the Italian game, Gioco Piano. Hopefully, I pronounced that properly. There are so many words I cannot say and pronounce properly, therefore, it can be read as Gioco Piano. Anyway, game continue with knight c3, knight f6, and we have a very similar position, or should I say symmetrical position. a3. Only idea is to push b4, attacks the bishop, and the black king castle short. And Stockfish also run for safety. b6 with the only idea of developing the bishop to b7 and d3, opening up the dark square diagonal. Bishop b7 justifying the push on b6. Bishop g5, poking the knight with the only intention of adding another attacker, pinning the knight, putting pressure, and Leela chess 0 pushes the pawn to h6, attacks the bishop. The bishop captures the knight, and the queen captured back the bishop. And Stockfish did not waste time, attacks the queen, and at the same time attack the pawn on c7. Therefore, the queen has to retreat in order to defend the vulnerable c7 pawn. c3 was played in order to prevent the knight from hopping to d4, bishop d6. Bishop d6, based on my poor, I would say, and reiterated that based on my poor understanding of the position, the bishop doesn't want to get hit with the b4 push or d4 push. That is why it went back to d6. Now, queen d2 connecting the rook, knight e7. Knight e7 is a simple maneuver or retreat. It attacks the knight on d5. Now, this is the basic principle of the world champion Bobby Fischer, that whenever you see your opponent's piece like encroaching or infiltrating in your position or in your side of the board, it has to be eliminated. That is why Leela demonstrate this simple principle from the world champion Bobby Fischer. So it attacks the knight on d5 with two attackers, the bishop and the knight as well. And in this position, Stockfish played a brilliant move in response to knight e7. Now, the move that Stockfish played is not that difficult to find. You can see it actually in this position, but as a human player or as a human intermediate player or an enthusiast, I don't think I will play it because it's risky, and although it has some potentials, but if it will be defended properly, I don't think, even if, like, I would second guess the move. But anyway, let's watch it because it's too risky as far as I'm concerned. You will lose something, and then I don't know if you will underestimate your opponent. Probably yes, you will play it, but if your opponent is also a strong player, then I guess your opponent will find a solution to it because that move is brilliant, but only if your opponent cannot defend the position. So let's watch it. By any means, Stockfish played it anyway. So yes, so it should be a brilliant move. So knight f6 was played in this position, which is brilliant, like I said, because if pawn takes knight, then queen takes pawn on h6. And knight, what you call this, knight g6 cannot be played because the pawn is pinned to the king. And yeah, let's say like this, queen takes knight, and the king moves to h8, and the queen h6 check, king g8, and then with a simple threat of knight f5 or knight g6. So yes, however, there is a defense to that position, which is also a basic principle of chess, that whenever your opponent attacks you on the flank, like what Stockfish did, then you can defend your position by playing, or let's say, for example, it's been played, right? So, like this. Yeah. So instead of playing that like this, if the position is like this, therefore, there is a move that you will be able to defend your position by playing bishop c5. Now, bishop c5 is also a brilliant move because even if the queen takes the pawn, which is, uh, takeable, or should I say vulnerable, and d5 will stabilize the position because the g6 square and the f5 square is now protected. So yes, this is always the counterplay. Whenever your opponent attacks you on the flank, you also have to create a counterplay in the center. This is why the engine demonstrates how important it is to control the center. Most of the time when you see or when you watch any engine games, it always emphasizes the importance of the central squares. Right, now the game continue with Leela chess 0 instead of, or rather capturing the knight on f6. Then Leela just pushed the king away to h8. And the game continue with Stockfish retreating the knight to g4, putting pressure on the h6 pawn, and any move apart from a defensive move will result into a devastating effect or attack. So the only move that's available is knight g8. So any other move apart from knight g8 will result, like I said, in a devastating attack. And the game continue with rook a e1, Queen e8, queen d1. Now I don't understand queen d1, but let's just continue watching the game. c5 with the only idea of preventing the push to d4. But Stockfish, being the world's number one chess engine and the best, pushes the pawn to d4 anyway, and c takes d, and rook c8. Leela took the initiative on the C open file, the only open file in the position. And Stockfish moves away the bishop. Of course, it has to run. A6 attacks the bishop. Bishop d3 retreats, and pawn takes d. And e5 attacks the bishop. In spite the fact that the diagonal or the diagonal light square diagonal is now open, Stockfish risk it and push the bishop away. So bishop e8 retreats the bishop anyway, and now it's creating all some nasty tricks in the book. All of Leela Chess Zero's bishop is now aiming on the king side. However, the position is, if you look at the evaluation bar, white is still 1.1 advantage. All of its pieces, white's pieces, are now looking on the king side, or let's say it was positioned on the king side, ready to attack any time in the future. So in this position, white played, or Stockfish played, knight h4 with the only idea, based on my poor understanding, to push the pawn to f4. Queen e7 attacks the knight, and g3 prevents that from happening. Rook ce8, f4 was played. Now, this move shows hostility, and it only proves one thing, that something is going to happen in the next few moves if the black pieces is not accurate in its responses. Therefore, black played queen c5. Now, queen c5 is to relocate the queen to d5 probably, or to c6 with a threat of a queen h1 mate. Right? So knight f uh, b4, sorry. b4 attacks the queen retreats to c6. Like I said, it has a mating threat of queen h1. And Stockfish, being one of the world's, or the world's number one chess engine, is very resourceful, retreated the knight to f2, defended the position, and b5 was played. Queen g4, queen b6, queen f5 threatens mate in 1. g6 prevents that from happening. Queen g4, queen c6, again renewing the threat if in case the knight moves away. Either knight will move, then checkmate. Queen h3, probably planning to push the pawn or sacrifice the knight. And this square is protected. So it's either the knight's going somewhere. That is why the queen was relocated to h3 in order to defend the g2 square, because the black queen is threatening mate here or in this square. So yes, that's probably, in my poor understanding, that's the only reason why the queen moves down. And as well as the push to g4, definitely. Anyway, the game continue with king g7, rook c1 attacks the queen moves away, f5 was push. So the only counter attack on the king side was to push the pawn to f5. h5 was played. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes pawn, and in this position, Stockfish played another brilliant move, which is knight f5. So knight f5 is quite obvious, really, but yeah. Now, in this position, if we look at it properly, right, the king has only three squares to move. Which one? f6, h8, and also if the king captures this, of course. Those are the only three available square for the king, right? So the game continue with, I mean, let's say for example, let's play something like king h8, for example. So if the king moves down to h8, then queen takes h5, and the position collapses immediately with this move, right? So it's checkmate next move. Of course, the only possible, no, not next move, but two moves after that. So the knight can just cover here, then the queen takes it, and then, yeah, next move is made. So let's say, for example, if the king, rather than going to h8, let's say the king goes to f6. And if the king goes to f6, then the king is in the rook's line of attack. If you get what I mean, this line of attack. So now it's the king is on the f file, which is, like I said, it's on the line of attack. Now, the continuation for this is queen takes h5, removing the pawn before its final attack. So let's say like pawn takes pawn, and then knight g4 with a check. Now, knight g4 is also a brilliant move. Let's say, for example, if the king goes to f7, then knight d6 with a check. King e7, queen takes rook, and king d8, and checkmate next move, right? So it's quite dangerous for the actually for the black king. Now the last option, or the third square that the king can move to after this, is the king takes pawn. Now the next move is so difficult to find. This is one of the brilliant move why I like this game, because the next move is so difficult, like I said earlier, and I keep on saying it. As an intermediate player, I don't think I will find this move, to be honest. Now, based on my poor understanding of the position, I don't think I will find this move because it's so difficult that I don't even understand it at first. But as soon as I keep on thinking about it, and as soon as I explore all the possibilities, then the move was so brilliant that I begin to, or I began to appreciate, and like, ooh, what a brilliant move, really, to be honest. So, like I said, it's so difficult to find, but the move was knight g4. Knight g4 is not even a check. It is a sacrifice of the knight of a knight. However, knight g4 attacks the rook, right? It's not even like, "Ooh, what is this," right? So if pawn takes knight, then knight e7 with check. Now, the king cannot go to this file because the rook is controlling it. Therefore, there's only two squares available, and the king cannot go to the h file because the queen is there as well. Therefore, the king can only move either g5 or g7, which will lead to a checkmate either way. Like, let's say, for example, king g5. And yeah, queen h4, check, and it's a mate. And if the king moves to g7, then queen h7 checkmate as well. So yes, it's a brilliant move. That is why I love it. I love the game, and I find it so interesting in the position, which is very difficult to find. Because if you look at it, if you don't follow up with a check, right? That's the reason why the queen was here in the first place. So yes, where were we? So knight f5. Yes, this is the brilliant move there, or best move. So if the king moves or takes the pawn, then you know that it's checkmate. So the reason why the queen was here, because it guards this square, right? So let's say, like, what happened there? So knight g4, kings takes this, going back, knight g4, because the queen no longer in the light square that will create a mate. So that's the reason why it's not possible. I mean, this move was possible. Knight g4. Anyway, the game continue with, let's go back to the position like this. Therefore, Leela Chess Zero was forced to sacrifice an exchange by taking the knight with its rook. And the game continue with queen takes rook, pawn takes pawn, and queen takes d7 with a check. Rook blocks the check. Queen goes up. Rook moves down, and the queen moves to e2. Knight f6. Knight h3. Queen d6. Rook moves up. Knight d7. Rook takes rook. King takes rook. Rook c1. King g7. Queen d8. And the knight centralize to e5. Now, in this position, it's so difficult to infiltrate Leela Chess Zero, because if you look at it, the diagonal has been controlled by the bishop. This bishop's the light square, and the queen is also, and the bishop is also creating a battery. Threat goes there. There's a lot. So in order for Stockfish to infiltrate Leela Chess Zero's position, is to play a brilliant, or another brilliant move, which is bishop e4. Now, bishop e4 with only one intention. This is a brilliant move because it deflects the black's light squared bishop that is guarding on c8. This bishop guards this square. Therefore, if it moves, which was what is happening in the game, or which happens in the game, therefore, Stockfish can now infiltrate the position with, after bishop takes bishop, and then the rook infiltrates the eighth rank of the position. Now, if you look at the evaluation bar, this is already winning for Stockfish, which has 3.7 advantage. So knight f7, queen takes e4, d3 pushes the pawn, rook attacks the queen, queen moves down, check, king f8, rook f6, putting pressure on the knight, and bishop gives a check, knight f2 blocks, queen protects, queen f5, offering an exchange of queens, and Leela chess 0 declined. Queen c8, king moves, rook e6 attacks the queen, and Leela pushes the pawn to d2, ignoring the threat of uh, rook takes queen. Because if rook takes queen, then Leela can just push the pawn to d1 and promotes it to a new queen, which is what happened in the game. So rook takes queen and d1, another queen. King g2, bishop takes knight, queen moves down to f5, and queen g1 check, king f3, king h1 check, king takes bishop, queen takes pawn, king moves down, and another check, check, blocks, and the queen moves to d5. Queen f3 offering an exchange. Queen a2 with a check. And in this position, Leela is trying to check the white kings in case if there will be a possibility of a draw or perpetual draw. But unfortunately, Leela is playing the world's number one chess engine. Therefore, in this position, Stockfish is still winning. So yes, like I said, Leela is looking for a perpetual check. Unfortunately, Stockfish is very resourceful and prevented the perpetual. And it ends up with the exchange of queens, and now it's only a matter of time after the knight was captured. Then Stockfish is totally winning. And in this position, Leela Chess Zero resigns the game because there is nothing more to be done. And that's it for our 15th episode of the series. And I hope to see you again, or and I hope you will support the channel. Thank you once again, and bye for now.